Hey everybody, this is part 2. So we did a video about, it's a Yahoo video, Yahoo video, come on. It's a Yahoo article. Finance returns to the 70s. Today's housing market echoes the dark era of the 70s. So we talked about is, are we going back to the 1970s style of economy? You know, stagflation, inflation, you know, gas lines, but I don't think we'll have that. Who knows? You know, but we went through, and everything's on part 1. So you really need to check out part 1. You know, if you haven't watched it yet, stop this video, go to part 1 of this video, and then come back to this video. But the recap basically is, some people, consumer confidence is way down. Some people think we're going to go back to the 70s style.
Right.
And we were talking about how builders, you know, we can't build our way out of this.
Right. Eventually we'll build our way out of it, but it's not going to be this, you know, overnight process, 1 or 2 years. It took us 20 plus years to get here. It's going to take us some time to get out of it. You
know, and people basically, you know, if rates, we were talking about this on part 1, if rates hit double digits, say they do hit 10%, you know, people are saying we're going to have 2 rate cuts this year. Come on.
I don't see it.
I just don't. It's May, you know, then June, we're not going to have 2 rate cuts. I don't see it. Because if they do rate cuts, they're admitting that we're in trouble, and that's going to cause even higher inflation. And then people will get laid off, and then the economy will go bad, and the inflation will still go up, and then we'll have stagflation. Right. Yeah. I'm not an economist. This is all my opinion, but I mean, that's pretty basic stuff. It is basic stuff. Yeah, that's pretty basic stuff. I just don't see it. Do me a favor, consider subscribing. It really helps. I'll leave it at that. All right. Why don't you continue the article? All right. Picking up where we left off in our last segment.
While builders are responsible for much of the inventory currently available, the undersupply is also caused by homeowners who are locked in, sitting on ultra low rates, like we were talking about in the last segment.
Okay, so on the last segment, we were talking about people that have 3.5% rates are not giving up they're not giving up their mortgages to buy another house. Right. And then me and you got in a little disagreement that I have golden handcuffs in Florida because I'm not giving up my ultra low property taxes because I've been in the house a long time. Right. To sell it and then go from, you know, from a few $1,000s to $10,000, $12,000 for an equivalent house.
Right, because I don't view you purchasing your home, you know, years ago and staying in it as a punishment. I look at it as a positive.
No, it is, but at the same time, if I want to sell it, like the house, because of Florida, because we do homestead, the house in Hudson is not going to be a homestead. Right. So, and because it's on the water, I already got, you know, not only they want $25,000 impact fee just to build it, but the taxes are going to be like 10 grand. Yeah. Because I'm not going to live in it. To start. Yeah, just to start. But if I homesteaded it, yes, it'll slow it down, but it'll still be 10 grand. Right. Anyways, I don't want to. Basically, we're not building our way out of this. And people do have golden handcuffs. Inventory. A lot of people aren't selling the house because of the rates.
No, that's 100% true. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There's people that do not and will not sell because of the interest rates and taxes combined.
And you know, and I went into some houses, you know, that is older people. I'm not saying I'm young, but older people. And I'm like, wow, this is like a 5-bedroom, 4,000 square foot house. They're like, yeah. I was like, it's only 2 of you. It's like, yeah, we can't afford to sell it. You know, because they're like, where are we going to go? We don't want to pay all the property taxes. They've owned the house for 20 years, you know, so they're...
Right. But that makes sense. Like, I get it. People may want to sell their house, but it's everybody's specific situation. Like we've talked about in the past, it's everybody's specific situation as to what you're going to do in your situation. And if you don't want to have that, you know, maybe quadruple, like in your situation, increase in taxes, then that's what you have to do. You have to choose not to properly, you know, sell your property.
Yeah, go for it.
The U.S. is still short 6.5 million single-family homes compared to the number of families starting new households, according to realtor.com. And that's true. 6.5 million homes short.
But weren't we still short? Weren't we still short of that before the pandemic?
Yes, we've been short for a long time. The pandemic exposed the kind of the chink in the armor, if you will, and the pandemic just made it even worse.
Yeah.
Because of the ultra low interest rates allowed a lot more buyers to come onto the market.
Right, and then people, they
and refinance I didn't even think about.
Yeah, the refinancing. So people that were in the house, so they took cash out of the house, they got the ultra low rates, and then when people were allowed to remote work, they didn't even want, they moved and inventory went down to nothing.
Right.
Give you an example, in Hudson, Florida, where I'm building, the average amount of houses on the canals was like 5, 6 during.
Right, yeah, I remember.
But now there's 90 on for there, and that's all because of insurance. People just can't afford insurance.
Can't afford insurance.
So
it's crazy. Yeah. All right. In the 2010s, after all the home builders went out of business, when the housing market bubble burst, they only built big houses because only rich people could buy back. They could just buy back then. That was it. So it was the safe bet. And what we're seeing now is the inverse of that. A lot of new builds out on the east side of the county in Pasco where they're building, because Pinellas is there's no more land left. So, and then Hillsborough and Pasco are kind of the next frontier, if you will, on the east. There's been a lot of projects put on hold on the large scale.
But that's happening across. I read that about happening in Texas too.
Yeah, because it makes sense, because we need to come up with inventory, and we need it needs to be affordable homes is kind of where they're heading, and that's where the market is right now.
It looks like they're going to address what you were just talking about.
Oh, so what's changed? Home builders are now building smaller houses. Okay, so we did just touch on that. That's it's every day I start to see it. In some ways, that imbalance of supply and demand is what's reflecting in the consumer price index, an inflation gauge that shows prices for everyday goods from gas, food, and shelter and rent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense.
Nothing's getting cheaper.
No.
And when they say, oh, inflation's at 3.5, I think that's bull, because I think it's much. And don't forget, they're comparing the prices today from a year ago. Why don't you compare the prices today from 3 years ago?
Exactly.
Or pre-pandemic,
Yep. Yeah, it's down 3%, but it went up 23%. So really, we're still up 20.
Yeah. It's stupid.
While shelter accounts for 1/3 of the overall CPI reading, it is just a snapshot in time that fails to paint the picture of what home buyers are experiencing today. Housing and shelter inflation is the only piece of the CPI that's not telling us where we are at this moment. In terms of housing costs rising or falling, it's telling us the story over time, and we've had big swings. Right, so there's always lagging data.
Always.
It just takes too much time to get the data crunched together, and there's lagging data, and it just takes us so long to figure things out. And then you have to analyze things that are over a 1-year period, because it's a slow process.
That's right. Some people are saying we're in a recession right now, while others people are saying we're not in a recession.
Right, and then they talk about how it when they're counting CPI and market data, what they count and what they don't count versus a different metric that's used.
And they play with the numbers, and then they readjust the numbers after the fact when nobody's looking. They're like,
oh, we revised it. We
revised it a little bit, yeah. But especially this year, because it's a political year, the elections are coming up. I think they're going to prop everything up, until election day, and then I think the first quarter of 2025, doesn't matter who's president, I think things are going to crash down. And I'm not going to speak about politics that much, but I'm going to say one person's going to blame the other person, for it,
No matter who is the president, they're going into a sticky situation.
Yeah.
It just doesn't matter. And you're always, we just as humans in nature, we go, well, it was fine here. And then now you took over, and then all of a sudden it changed. Nothing changes that fast.
No.
You know, especially on a governmental level, on a national level, things don't change, you know, in 6 months.
It's not overnight, but you know, I still think that we're heading for a cliff, but that's me. And I'm not being a doomsday person.
No.
I'm literally looking at the numbers, you know, and listening to some really, really smart people that just base everything on the numbers.
Yeah.
You know, and they're like, hey, this is the numbers, this is what it was, you know. But go ahead.
Yep. Home prices increased 5.7% over the past year, according to the latest CPI, but were down from their peak of 8% in March of 2023. According to Sahim, shelter inflation has failed to reflect inventory that's freshly entered on the market, including new construction in the pipeline. As that supply enters the market, shelter inflation should continue to soften this year. You can't buy what's not for sale.
Absolutely.
Makes sense. So,
and speaking about new construction, a lot of builders got caught with their pants down in 2006,
right,
7, 8, you know, when they were doing the projects. They're being, because I work with builders, okay, and I see project managers and I talk to them, okay, they're right on the front line, and they tell me they're like, we are being super, super cautious because they have a lot of people canceling the contracts.
Yeah.
It's a big, big problem. And, you know, one person, I don't know if it's true, but he said a third of their clientele is canceling their contracts on new construction.
Holy smokes.
Because people are starting to panic. They're worried about their jobs. They're worried about inflation. They're worried about, because between now and the election, everything will be fine. In my opinion, everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to hit the fan the first quarter. Go for it.
According to some housing experts, concerns about stagflation stem from a slower pace of sales in recent months. For instance, the share of previously owned homes fell just over 4% in March, according to the National Association of Realtors. Year over year, sales were down nearly 4%. While the number of existing homes on the market is showing signs of improvement, it's still near historic lows. I mean, that's, yeah, we've been talking about this. That's true, period.
But do you think, how long do you think that's going to remain true, in your opinion, in 2025?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're just paying attention to the new builds and what's coming on the market. I just don't see, you know, we don't have a lot of stale inventory. If you get past the, you know, the homes that sit that were overpriced, if you get past those a little bit, stale inventory are like properties that when I make that comment, I'm saying properties that just plain aren't going to sell.
Yeah. Buyers, even first-time home buyers, are finding a way to purchase and afford something even at 7% mortgage rate, Fleming said. The drag on the market is inventory, particularly the existing home sales side of the market. The inventory of unsold existing homes grew to nearly 5% from the previous months, to 1.11 million in March, according to NAR. That's equivalent of just over 3 months of supply at current sale price. Still, that's well below the 6 months needed for a balanced market. Is that correct? You need 6 months?
Yeah, they say 5 to 6 months is a balanced market.
So right now we're at 3 months.
Right, and we've been at 3 months for almost 14 years.
Okay, I just reread what you read before. The reason why is because I just wanted to make sure that we got that point across.
Yeah. As of April, the national median listing price for active listings was $425,000, which is up 14% compared to a year ago. A separate study from realtor.com found and up just 32% from April 2020 levels. Overall, active listings were down 60% from the year 2020. So from 4 years ago, we're down 60% of active listings. And that makes sense because everybody was selling. And
everything is overpriced right now.
Right, it's just, well, and the thing is, like, what I noticed with this article right here, what they just did, they specifically went back to the pandemic. Because it makes the numbers look bigger and scarier, right? So if we go backwards and go pre-pandemic,
yeah, like cut out the pandemic.
Cut out the unicorn, those 4 unicorn years.
Cut it out.
Wipe those off. Now let's go back and look at the data and see where we're at. And I'd be willing to bet, and I've done some research on this. Obviously, I'm not a national economist or anything like that, but I'm looking at it, and we're getting back to where things normally were. So when I'm looking at data on what was listed and what things are sitting, so on and so forth, absorption rates, we're back getting closer to pre-pandemic levels, but we still, inventory-wise, in that 3 to 3.3 months of inventory continue. We're not breaking that trend.
Prices remain sticky just because of the lack of inventory. We're still far from normalized. They keep repeating everything.
You're saying the same thing over
Unlike
and over again.
the 1970s era stagflation, we have elevated unemployment rates coupled with high inflations. That's not the case today. We talked about that.
Yep.
Okay. But I think it may be the case. I think inflation will go up, and I think unemployment in the economy is going to go down again the first quarter. The U.S. labor market remains steady in April. Although fewer jobs were added than expected, the Bureau of Labor Statistics also registered a slowdown in wage growth, a modest uptick in the unemployment rate. That's what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. People are starting. They have their fingers in, in the dam.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing. They're still spending stimulus money trying to keep everything up. They're trying to plug every hole there is, until the election. And then after the election, they're like, oh, well, we got to let the pressure out no matter who's there. So again, politics. If Trump wins the first 2 years, everything goes to bad, he's going to blame everything on Biden. If Biden wins again, what's going to happen is he's going to say, yeah, things are bad, but I'll let people hate me for 2 years, and then the next 2 years, things will get better. So that's all it is,
Because he's still fixing the damage from the previous.
Yeah, so they're talking about the overall job market.
Yeah, spending is good, incomes are good, job markets are expanding at a good rate, which means more paychecks, more incomes, more spending.
I don't believe all that. Anyways.
I don't know about that. Yeah, so.
But listen, we won't even continue this part, but do you guys think that we're heading back to the 1970s? That's what I want. I want your opinion. I want your comments below. I think that we are. Mm-hmm. I think some people are starting to feel it now. But I think that we're going to have stagflation. I think unemployment's going to go up. I think prices are still going to go up.
Yeah.
I just think the poor are going to get poorer. The middle class is going to get poor. And to be a middle class person now, in some areas, we're going to do a video on that, but some areas is like, just to be middle class, you have to make like $130,000 to be middle class.
Right. Yeah.
And according to this article that we're going to talk about in the next video, in a couple of videos from now, it used to be $75,000 for this particular area. Now it's $134,000 to be considered middle class.
Right. Yeah, everything is up. I mean, we keep saying the same thing over and over again, and it's tough because wages aren't keeping up with they're getting better from the articles and stats apparently, but wages aren't keeping up with,
So what's your prediction? Okay, I asked everybody else to tell us what their prediction is right after the election, because between now and the election, like I just said, things will be fine. But right after the election, I think things are going to be 1970 style horror. And you guys, and a lot of people don't even know what I'm talking about because they weren't around in the 70s.
I was pretty young in the 70s, like the early 70s, and I didn't start working until the 80s. But at the end of the day, I think, it's like I remember my parents and things like that and just being around for a minute. Looking at cycles for these election years, they want you to feel warm and fuzzy up until the election. And then no matter what, the rug gets pulled out from under you at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And that's just history. It's history.
It is. Everything repeats itself, and hopefully it won't be as bad as it was in the 70s, but who knows what's going to happen.
Right.
That's today's video. Do me a favor, consider subscribing. And if you just watched this whole video and you did not watch part 1, it is right here. And I hope I'm pointing to the right place. Right.
It's going to be over my face for sure.
Over his face.
Not over Jimmy's face.
Oh. So, watch that video, comment below, subscribe, hit the bell notification, and we will catch you on the next one.
See you on the next video. Thank you.
You.